This empty chair represents the addict who died today, not knowing recovery was possible.
Hi, my name is Colleen Leahy, and I'm an addict in recovery. And this is a show that me and my dad Phil do called the Empty Chair Exposing Addiction. And the empty chair represents the addict who died not knowing recovery was possible, an addict who lost their life due to the disease of addiction, whether it was the drug or the lifestyle. I have had people in my life that that chair represents. So we do this show to raise awareness and to let people know that that recovery from addiction is possible and there is hope. So I'd like to introduce my co-host, Phil Leahy, my dad.
Thank you. I'm Phil Leahy, and again, welcome to another episode of our show. As you know, we try to have a variety of guests, a variety of different aspects of addiction. In the past, we've been well represented by the criminal justice people. We've had Sheriff Cousins, we've had Judge Michael Brooks, and tonight we're pleased to have Methuen Police Chief Joe Solomon. A lot of us kind of have criminal justice as, you pick them up, throw them in jail, and don't worry about them. What I've found out with our past guests, and what I'm sure I'm going to find out tonight also, is that it's not just about locking them up. They understand that treating addicts is the best way to reduce crime. So, Chief, thank you for being on our show. I'm glad to get some insight from the Methuen criminal justice part. So, just to start it off, why don't we kind of hit on the aspect. Now, I know that you obviously make a lot of arrests that pertain to addiction, drug dealers, so forth like that. What's the process that you guys do, and what's the process that you'd like to do?
Well, thank you both for having me here tonight. And based on some of our past conversations, we're all aware of how widespread this problem has become, not only in our community, but in the Valley and in all of the United States. And the typical process for an arrest for somebody that may be under the influence, we'll bring them in, try to book them. Hopefully, they can stay awake and they don't lapse into an overdose. We usually have to take them to the hospital. We have to have them checked out. The unfortunate part is we don't want to just process people. So it's a matter of processing them in and processing them out. What we've been very lucky with Sheriff Cousins in Essex County, and I know our earlier conversation you talked about him, he has one of the best rehabilitation programs around. Yep. And he truly believes we have to end, we talk about the cycle of violence, we have to end the cycle of drug abuse, not only for an individual, but what I see, children, the child who I met when I came on, who then became the dad whose child is using drugs, who's now has a grandchild who maybe in the 6th grade who's using drugs. We need to break the cycle, and I think really what we're lacking is the prevention method. Right. And Sheriff Cousins does a great job trying to rehab and reduce recidivism, because if you come out of jail still with that addictive mentality, you're going to get your drugs, you're going to go do house breaks, car breaks, and other crimes, and where do you end up? If you're not dead from an overdose, you end up back in jail. Right. So somewhere in the system, where's the prevention module? And unfortunately, we were talking earlier, we're talking about, we would always think 27 years ago, we think high school. Now we're talking 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, which I think astonishes parents, but we need to get to them before they're exposed by their friends, by the internet, by someone they met on the street. And if we can't start to build the preventative method and module and thinking in the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, we're losing them once they do the drugs. Right. That's where I was glad to have been invited to the 2 meetings ago that your group had. And honestly, working together as that group, we need more people. We need the public's help to grow the groups. Because I get calls all the time, as I know you said you have, and people say, what am I going to do? My child, my daughter, my son, straight A, honor student, inducted in the Honor Society, hurt their knee, hurt their shoulder, had surgery, started taking legitimate prescription medication, unfortunately had an addictive personality. Now my kid's doing heroin. What do I do?
And when you said like sixth grade, like the grandchild is sixth grade, and now they're using it. You noticing, because I am also like younger and younger, like harder drugs. Because when I was going to detox, when I was using, I was a late bloomer, and I was like 21, 22 when I started using heroin, and that's like really late. Like, because I go to detoxes sometimes to speak for the meetings and everything, and the kids that are in detox are like teenagers,
right.
like 17, like 18. And it just like blows my mind, like the harder drugs that kids are doing now at like such younger ages. So are you noticing that, like, obviously?
I'd even say you're looking at preteen, that late group, the 10 to 12 group, starting something.
Yeah.
Whether it's I drank a little vodka, I had a beer, I smoked a joint, to the experimental mode. And what a story you told me earlier when we were talking outside, hey, I'm high, I smoked a couple of joints, had a few beers, try this. And I don't even know what it is, but because my willpower is low, I just try it because, hey, everyone else is doing it.
Absolutely.
And that I might be able to take a drug and never want to take it again, where one other person has one snort of the drug or one shoots up once and they're done. It's all over because the chemistry takes over. So if we're not doing that foundation, and I say in the 10 to 12 age group, other people I've talked to said it's before then. They want to see us really starting late third grade, early fourth grade to talk about it, to talk what you said, prevention.
Yeah.
Listen, here's what happens, and this is your option, what you do, but here's the outcome. Here's the responsibility of the actions you take. There are consequences.
Well,
we need to get to that younger.
Yeah, and we were talking again before, and you're right. The younger you get to them, the better. The good thing is you are given that basic knowledge. I think the trouble is, well, like I said, when Colleen went and spoke to the 7th grade, she had a good impact, but then it stopped, and they probably didn't hear anything more about it for who knows when. So I think it does have to be a continuing thing. And to me, maybe because I was probably one of the worst enablers of a parent. I mean, I run a pretty successful support group based on all the mistakes I made. So, and I've talked to Dean Brewer and I've talked to Judy Scanlon, but they seem to, they've tried to have meetings to get parents there, to try to at least give them the basic education, to look for certain things, changes in their kids. I mean, I saw changes in her and I knew what they were, and I just really fluffed it off because I said, it's no big deal. And I know parents are still saying that.
Right. No, I agree, and I think there's multiple aspects to that. One is, I'm so busy, I'm a single parent, or I'm married, and both of us are working 2 jobs. So I see something with the kid. I said, she's not too bad, he's not too bad. I'll check on him tomorrow. Oh, he looked, and I think it's that wishful thinking. Oh, he looked better today. Yeah, he's laying on the floor throwing up. He looks better today. So I think that's part of it. I also think part of it is, what do we do? Who do we go to? And
Very
if
good.
I think there's a problem, what's my next step? And then the biggest problem I see, you mentioned it earlier as before the show, embarrassment.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what if my neighbor knows? I can't do this. I can't let my neighbor know that. I can't let my family know. I can't let my friends know. Well, you know what? It's better to be embarrassed and come out and say it than to be at a wake, and the wake be your child.
And you're up to, and I think you said, the key thing you said in our whole thing, what do we do? And you're so right. I mean, there's all kinds of information out there, but it's just that I don't know if people know how to obtain it. I mean, one of the things we enjoy doing about this show is we have such a wide variety of guests, addicts, parents, criminal justice, education, and we are trying to get that awareness out. And I know you do it on a regular basis anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, the show's based around like breaking the stigma attached to addiction and the shame and the embarrassment and the guilt, and it's the same thing for people, like in recovery, like addicts too. Like there's a stigma against like addiction, but then, in the world of like, active addiction, there's a stigma like against the police that, and the parents that like, well, this is the enemy and like, and we can't go to them. And like, this just goes to show that like when you are clean and you are doing the right thing, because I never thought that, 5-6 years ago that I'd be sitting doing a TV show with the chief of police and my dad, because that would definitely be like, like the number one like enemies. But we're trying to like break that stigma. Like you guys are here to help, to prevent, to save lives. And just like the parents who are, doing like the support groups and the police that are trying like the prevention and getting the kids when they're in like, what would you say, like third, fifth grade, and plant that seed.
4th grade and planting the seed.
Yep, building the
and then
foundation.
working through with it. And I get calls all the time, and I know you do, and the calls are getting more desperate.
Oh,
They're getting
absolutely.
younger. They're getting to, all my jewelry stolen, all my gold coins are stolen. There's $5,000 missing from the checkbook, and now my kid's gone with my car, and I don't know what to do. People are getting more and more desperate, and part of it might be the stigma, and I think part of it is, I had a learning curve, and I wish I met you 5 years ago on this subject, even though we've known each other.
Right.
I wish I knew more about the subject 5 years ago as a professional, because what did I do? I scrambled, finally got my EAP person, the Employee Assistance Program psychologist, and said, hey, I need help for non-employees. I have parents calling me and their kids are on heroin, they're on cocaine, they're severe alcoholics, they're on all kinds of pills, they're buying oxys and everything, Valiums on the streets. We have nowhere to send them because the programs are get in the hospital, go 3 days, dry out, go home. I was lucky enough to be able to connect some people, family members and other members, people of the community have called me to a place in Florida and a place in Arizona. The problem is because of insurance, it's extremely expensive. So I think one of the other big things, and I know Representative DeZoglio has been working on that with you too, where are we gonna get, when are we going to get some local treatment, and where can people turn to? Because I know I have resources, I know you guys do, but parents need resources because sometimes they're just embarrassed to tell
Oh,
anybody.
yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, this time of year here, it obviously is hard to find a bed, but there are a lot of available beds out there that don't cost. They're not in the nicest places in the city, but they're good programs. You were in Dorchester and Lawrence and so forth like that. They're out there, but like you
They
said,
do a lot of footwork and a lot of
a lot
parents-
of
It's hard enough
footwork.
for them just to say, well, my kid's an addict and they need treatment, but
Right.
then to actually like make calls.
Yeah, I mean, we were fortunate. The late Joe Cotton, that was down the Psychological Center, who basically started our support group. Obviously because of him, she's probably alive because he helped us find programs. But it shouldn't be that way. When you're sick, you should be able to go for treatment.
Yeah.
No, I agree, and I always talk about the stigma part because people don't say, they say it doesn't happen here in Methuen, but I'm going to repeat the conversation we had at that last meeting, and at this point here, it's probably 7 years ago. I'm on Milk Street in Methuen, and I hear a medical call for somebody not breathing. I said, well, I'm right here, so I got a medical bag, so I call out, I'm gonna go, and as I pull up to the house, I look at the house, I'm like, it's my cousin's house. So I'm thinking, my age, he had a heart attack, he's dead. Let's get in the house and help him. I walk in the house and I see the mother and father, and they're pointing downstairs and they're crying. I'm like, well, there's no other older people in this house. Because then medical call,
Sure.
as I run downstairs, I see laying on the floor a cousin of mine, dead with a needle in his arm. Too late, because he had been dead all night. I could tell everything had already settled in his body. And there's a 19-year-old kid dead. Now, I knew he had a problem, and I knew he went to rehab. And as far as I knew, and as far as his parents knew, he was doing really well. What we learned from some work was the night before he hooked up with some friends, hadn't done anything in months, got a hot load, and it was all over. So, it's, to tell the public, it's in our lives. It's in public safety's lives.
Absolutely.
It's in our former city leaders' lives, it's in current leaders' lives, it's in our doctors, our nurses, everybody's suffering from this problem. So you know what, we can talk about it, so it's okay for you to talk about it. I
good
encourage
point.
people to call my office who have a problem, and if nothing else, I can be a conduit to get them in touch with you or some other group. But we need to talk about it. We need to say, hey, it's affected our lives, and I'm never going to be the same after I saw that day.
No.
So I can have a new appreciation, separate from law enforcement, that where is the prevention? Because maybe had he never tried it, he would be alive with us today. And so he'd be 26 today. Instead, he died at 19 years old, and that's a sad day for all of us.
It is. And when you think of people who die of addiction, for the most part, they are kids or young adults. You don't see too many heroin addicts on Social Security.
Right.
Now, you did mention that particular instance, but we also talked a little bit before where you and your men have had to respond to numerous ODs
Yes.
that didn't have such an unhappy ending.
Correct. It's not unusual, and people might be shocked. And we always get told as police chiefs, don't talk about how bad things are.
Yeah.
Talk about the good things. But you know what? The bad things is what people understand.
Yeah.
We're aware of it. We're doing something about it. It is not unusual in Methuen to go to 3 or 4 medicals a week for a drug overdose. And there was one couple of weeks ago, right on 28 in a restaurant. Person came down from New Hampshire, made a buy in Lawrence, parked in a business, went inside, went in the bathroom. They tried to go in the bathroom. There's the person, dead. The officers are working him. We tried to work an AED, couldn't bring him back. Paramedics show up. They gave him a shot of Narcan. By the time we got him in the ambulance, he was alive and he survived. We're repeatedly seeing a couple a week that are their lives are being saved because of the Narcan drug that the paramedics are carrying. But we're also seeing a significant number of teenagers in early 20s that are dying because we were too late to get to them. By the time we got there from the call was 5 minutes.
Right.
By the time the paramedics got there was 7, and the drug just couldn't work. I recently, 3 weeks ago, heard a call on Route 28 at a bank parking lot for 3 kids in a car, and I pulled up and I get out, I'm like, look at them, they're like 17, 18 years old. I'm like, no big deal. My police sense dropped down. I walked up to the window to see a kid with a needle in his arm and 2 girls preparing their needles, and like, I must have looked like a rookie because I was like, and I'm like, oh, I misjudged this whole call because they looked so young. Yeah. I think they were 17, 18, and maybe 21. From Maine, came down, bought the drugs. We're going to shoot up, veg out, and then drive back to Maine.
You're giving me like, I don't know, like chills like when you're talking, just because like you're telling like, stuff that happened to me, like my, story. I wasn't that young, but like, in the car, go down to Lawrence, stop at a place in Methuen, go, and that could have been me like over and over again. So that brings me back to before all that damage is done. Like when I was like young and we were talking about building a foundation and like planting a seed, because like being young, being like, little, a seed's gonna get planted regardless. So I think, doing the show and the work that you guys do and the work that we try and do is to try and get like the right seed planted in there, like when they're young, something to build on, so that they know like the realities of like what could happen, because it is a reality. You're telling me like, 3 or 4 overdoses in Methuen alone. Yeah. So it does happen in Methuen, not that like all over the place. The disease of addiction doesn't discriminate, and you see that like every day. So I think that, the prevention part, like, we need treatment and we need more detox and we need beds, like we need like all this stuff, but even like way even before that happens, before kids know about, being sick from drugs or drinking or car accidents and arrests and all this, like when they're younger, it makes me think of like my niece and nephew, like they're little, like, to plant that seed when they're young. So maybe they can just go down a completely different road and not have to worry about, praying to God that they find a bed in the wintertime, So I think that that's great that, the prevention that you guys like want to do.
Well, I have a question for you too. When we talk prevention, what about, did you think it was okay to say I want help? Because one of the things I hear from the kids I talk to is, well, I didn't know I could tell my parents. I'm shocked that my dad brought me here for you to help me because I thought I'd be in trouble. So how do we work that into the prevention module? Or is that even, do you think that's an issue?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I just wanted to keep it a secret because I thought that I was going to get in trouble, and I thought that whatever I was going through was just like a phase. I didn't really have any like knowledge about addiction and the disease, and that it's progressive and curable and fatal, like all the stuff that I know now. Like I didn't know about that when I was younger, so there was no like education for me. So my biggest thing was just keeping it a secret because I thought he would, both of my parents,
for a long time.
a long time. It was a full-time job trying to keep it a secret from him. I didn't feel safe enough to go and talk to him about it because, he didn't have any, information on addiction either. Right. So it was definitely, keeping it a secret was a top priority.
Yeah. And
if I knew then what I do now, it would have been very different.
And you're right. Part of the prevention thing, if there is a way you can get the kids to talk to their parents, but I think it's a hard thing. And again, I think that's probably why we do have to work from the parents' end, to have the parents be able to tell the kids, if there's anything you can
It's okay, right?
I don't know how much time we have, but you did mention that Merrimack Valley Task Force that Representative DiZoglio started. You came to the first meeting. We did have a second. We have a third one planned in February. And I'm so thrilled that you don't even want active part in it, but you want to see where it's going. What are we going to accomplish? Right. And I do know that after the first meeting, I had calls from the probationary officer. They've sent people to our group. I've called Sheriff Cousins and his deputy, Deputy Farrow, who was at that meeting, and he's helped some people in the recovery program. Danielle has put one of our members in drug court. Where do you, let's say, if it continues the way it is, with really a lot of people and a lot of people in the field, where do you think this could lead to, say in a year, 2 years from now? Or what would you like to see it lead to?
I'd like to see it lead to more openness. I'd like it to see it lead to more of a public forum where we don't have 60 people or 30. I was amazed that day because when I went to the first meeting, I said, it's going to be like every other neighborhood or community meeting I go to. There'll be 12 people, and everyone's going to sit there like this, and all the board people are going to talk, and they're all going to leave, and I'm like, I didn't want to leave.
Yeah,
and
I
neither
was
did
shocked
anyone.
myself.
We were outside for another hour talking, and to listen to how people opened up and poured their hearts out. So I would hope it leads to more community engagement. And I think the more and more it grows, the more and more the stigma goes away. And then when I come in and I see my kid there with something, they don't even know what that brown stuff is. I'm going to reach out to a phone and make a phone call and say, hey, I just got my kid doing this. How do I talk to my kid? So I think the outgrowth should be to get more community involvement, more community notification, and it wouldn't even be great to have an annual event where parents could just come to one of our buildings. We have plenty of buildings in the city, and have all the different groups there, the psychological center, the courts, the rehab locations, some addicts in recovery to sit there. So a kid might be dragged by mommy and daddy, but then they talk to Colleen and like, oh, I can talk to her because they feel comfortable because we need that person-to-person contact. And I think that if you could get to one annual, like, I'm not going to call it an open house for lack of a better word. I've seen a lot of the things we've done with the crime prevention that has grown into, we have annual business crime prevention, annual bank crime prevention, annual neighborhood crime prevention, National Night Out. Think of if you had an event like National Night Out, what might not even be a better thing than our National Night Out? We take some of your team members, come with us to the neighborhoods as we visit all the neighborhoods in Methuen and have some information about your group and say, this is what we do. I mean, of course, my mind goes crazy. The thoughts are endless, but maybe having one annual event, even if I'm just here to look, but I really have an issue with somebody in my family, and I hook up with one person, we save one life. I think you'll save hundreds.
Well, I agree. If you did, like I say, whether we used the senior center or whatever big hall that was available, and you did, if you had tables set up at the psychological center, with the judge, with the sheriff's department, with the police department, with you and some of your people from NA and so forth like that, and with the support groups of families. You're right. I think that it could actually have quite an impact. And the most important thing you get, again, you say, is what me and Colin, trying to get it so you don't have to whisper about it. You can speak freely on it. And I think
you're attacking it from a lot of different angles too, because drugs are just like everywhere, and people think of it as just this huge, overwhelming problem, and it is. It absolutely is. But I mean, if you have like the law enforcement side and the family side and the addict side and the court side and the like all this stuff like coming together and working together, it's just breaking down like more and more walls and bringing people like together. Like like obviously you specialize on the police side, and like unfortunately, I know a lot about addiction and recovery. I mean, it's good for me now that I have all this experience, but at the time I wasn't grateful for it, but I am now. That's why I don't regret any stuff that I went through, because, I'm able to like help people with it today. And like with his stuff, like with his group, and like the more people we have like come together and be able to like work together, then I think, Desagio said she wants to like build an army, and like I loved it when she said that, because it's like, yeah, we really can like, make a huge difference.
Well, if you look at it as a circle, the hole in the circle is family engagement.
Yes.
We have everything else in place. You have everybody willing to work. We're missing the segment of the people that we need to help or that need the help, and it's because of the family engagement. But Market Basket, any store I go to, the corner variety store, just walking through the square, people are coming up to me and asking me, whispering on the side, what can we do for my kid? So now we need them to talk openly about it.
And I think it's huge that law enforcement, sheriff's department, that people understand that you guys, I want it to come out right, you've changed your attitude about addiction, say, over the last 10 or 15 years. You've come to learn that, yeah, they're committing a crime, but why are they committing a crime? They're committing a crime because they need something to make them well.
Right.
And you guys have learned that if we cut down on the addiction, we will also cut down on crime.
And you know, we could put as many people as we want every day. If I put 75 drug officers on the street today, I could make 300 arrests.
Yes.
But where does that get me? Because tomorrow I'll make 300 arrests.
Right.
So what I think what we've done is we start banging our head against the wall and saying, well, if we want to stop making drug arrests, then we're not going to stop the importation of drugs. Let's cut it off before people use it.
Yep.
And if they do use it, let's give them some options for intervention. So we've got a little smarter because we've got a lot of bumps in our head.
I think so. We've only got a couple minutes. Colleen, I'm going to let you, you have a few closing remarks?
I just want to say thank you for coming on the show and just, I don't know, just all the stuff you were talking about, like the overdose you've dealt with and seeing, you know, losing people. And I can identify with you when you know, saw the dead body. I lost my sponsor April 4th this year, and I'd never seen a dead body in my life. And that was the first time, and she died as a direct result of the disease of addiction. Her name was Joy Gallagher. I wouldn't be if it wasn't for her. So I just want to say, like, thank you for coming on here and sharing open and honestly about, like, your experience, because that's what makes people watch this show, you know, when it's, like, real life, when it's reality, and having, like, a passion for it, because I don't know about you, but I definitely have a passion just for all of this. So thank you for all the work that you do. I know it's, like, dangerous. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you coming on the show and being so honest.
And Joe, I also not only want to thank you for being on the show, but for the talk we had after that first meeting, to see the passion that you had about it. Shame on me, because I didn't expect that from the Sheriff's Department. I didn't expect it from the police. So, I mean, even with everything I've been going through with her, I'm learning things every day that the police, the Sheriff's Department, the whole criminal justice system has a good hold and a good idea on what addiction is, and that it's not just locking somebody up, it's trying to help somebody. So obviously I thank you. I look forward to work with you on the task force down the road. I love your idea about the annual event. I'm going to push like, almost said that. I'm going to push like heck for that. And I look forward to you know, a partnership with you and all the other organizations we've met. So I thank you 100 times over for being on our show, and not just being on the show, but taking an active part. With that, on behalf of Colleen and our special guest star, I'd like to thank you for joining us on The Empty Chair. I do hope you'll listen. I hope you'll spread the word. Also, you can catch us on YouTube by searching The Empty Chair Show. If you're listening, if you know somebody that has a problem, don't be afraid to give us a call. Maybe we can point you in the right direction. So on behalf of all of us and everybody at the station, I thank all the volunteers. We'll see you next month. Thanks again.